This is Still Here, Still Queer Now What, your queer midlife companion. I'm Dr. Paul Taylor-Pitt. So exciting. First guest of season 2. Amazing guest. Amazing guest. I'm very excited that Tim Spoor MBE, I'm going to add that special part, Tim Spoor MBE, is with me today on the podcast. Tim is the chief executive and founder of Queerwell, which is an amazing charity. Look, I love Queerwell. I'm wearing the t-shirt. I'm a volunteer with Queerwell. It's a mental health charity for the queer community. We talk about this in the podcast, and we also talk about Tim's remarkable life, about his journey to get to where he is today. It's an incredibly honest conversation. It's incredibly revealing. You'll find out why Tim and his partner call Russell T Davies Mystic Meg, as well as just hearing some of the stories about the lives that he's changed. It's quite remarkable. So sit back, enjoy. This is Tim Spoor. So how would you want people to meet you today?
Hi, I'm Tim Spoor, and I've been on a fantastic journey in my life. Never expected to end up where I was, or where I am, or where I is. But, I grew up in a little town in near Manchester, a very lonely and isolated boy, and I've managed to amass an incredible life adventure. And it's down to some wonderful queer people I've met and lots of people outside the queer community. I think the only thing I haven't tried yet is acting. Everything else that I set out to do, I've done. So, yeah, if I was to say what I'm most proud of, it's that I've been able to consistently work in the voluntary sector, the queer voluntary sector, and follow my dreams. I'm also incredibly proud of the people that have stood by me and walked alongside me throughout my life. Those long-term people and sometimes short-term people, because some people are not meant to be in your life forever, but those people that have just been on that journey with me. And I'm really proud of that.
And you say you've worked in the queer voluntary sector, but from my understanding of you, and I know some of you quite well, and I know a little about the other parts of you, but I feel like you've shaped the queer voluntary sector. You haven't just worked in it, like you've sculpted it and you've created things. Like, does that feel right to you?
I think this kind of gets to the nub of me. And the nub of me is I'm incredibly introvert and incredibly extrovert. And neither the twain have been able to come together. So there's part of me that's screaming inside, yes, I've done lots of things that people don't know about. And I have spent nearly 30 years shaping all sorts of work with queer people and been involved in, international stuff that's shaped a whole landscape of queer services and human rights. There's a bit of me that wants to shout about that, but there's another big part of me that's like, yeah, but I owe it all to a lot of people that have come along with me. Yeah, I don't want to get above myself. I'm a northern lad. We don't do that. So I'm always in total conflict. I'm either completely squirming or I'm a little too proud of what I've done.
But what about, like, in this space, if I was to offer you the conditions where you don't have to be humble and there's no place for embarrassment, like you don't have to do like a massive fanfare, but just like, what are some of the things that you feel most proud of that maybe people haven't had the opportunity to know about?
This is it. I think people see you in the present context and then people don't delve back. People don't know your life story. How could they, unless they know you really well? So I think a lot of people focus on what I'm doing now and not what I've done. So I think if I look back, first of all, I came from a household that was violent and I was rejected by my mum, not my dad. And a lot of people find that very odd, but it's how it was. And I really I struggled throughout my childhood because I was petrified of people finding out who I was. And I felt like a liar living a double life. And so I came from a place where I felt like I was useless and worthless. And it was hard for me to turn that around. And every time I tried to bring my voice to that situation, I couldn't. I felt trapped by my situation. And therefore I sidestepped opportunities. But then when I finally met people who encouraged me and kind of guided me, it did become a very giddy life. I had a whole time in activism in Manchester with the Section 28 rallies and, being part of the queer youth movement in Manchester. And And that was amazing for me because I think I carried along a little bit. From there, I was a mentor and buddy for people at George House Trust who were surviving HIV and living with AIDS at the time. And that was an odd time. It was the late 80s, and I was looking after my dad at home who was dying, and then seeing a completely different world through their eyes. So that was that. I'm really proud of that because I feel those lives, and everybody I work with has now died. Everybody I've volunteered to work with has now died at George S. Trust. And I look back on that and I reflect on that, and I think how special time that was, and important that was to me. And from there, I fell into social work, and this is it with me. I walked along the pathway, and every now and again, I'll drop into something that I didn't expect. I became a mental health specialist within social work. That was my first career move, and I did my master's in that. And I set out with a lot of very naive ideas about how I could change the world, how I could make every, queer person feel proud of who they were. And I got very carried away with myself, and I got crushed because I'm a big, I do see myself as a gentle soul, and I got crushed by a public sector system that was horrible to queer people, would pathologize their identity, would, humiliate people publicly. And there was a sense that you could do some inhumane things to queer people that you would never get away with anyone else. The bit I'm ashamed of is there were times when I didn't stand up for people. I did on the whole, and I found some very sneaky ways to get my own way and make sure people were safe. But I feel a little bit complicit at times, especially when working with psychiatrists. After that, I was always determined to get out of the public sector, to get out of that world. And I wanted to work in the queer voluntary sector. It was almost, that was set out for me. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Luckily, with my experience in service delivery, that's what I moved into. And what was exciting is an exciting time. It was the 90s. You could develop things and get them funded and try things out. So I did some amazingly audacious things back in the 90s, like, you know, set up the first relationship therapy service with what was Relate then for queer people coming out of what you would call cis heterosexual relationships. And, it's nice because the Daily Telegraph suddenly took an interest in me and did a big story that I was converting men to homosexuality. I was your original conversion therapist, I suppose you could say, on one level. And it was invigorating.
Points for doing it.
Yeah, I think I did. I missed out. I didn't get to 100 conversions, unfortunately. But in all seriousness, I just was really proud that we were helping both both partners come out of this relationship and remain a unit for their children, or just, as friends. And that was wonderful. And then I set up the first LGBT group in a secure hospital. That was just like the weirdest thing. We went to Rampton, which is a very famous secure hospital, and we went in there, and it was horrendous. There was all these people round the edge watching what we were doing and making it very difficult for these queer people to come along to this group and get the support they wanted and they needed. And every time was a battle. Coming in, we were treated like second-class citizens. And I watched and learned, how these people who were actually patients within this hospital were treated back then. I know things have moved on massively, but that I was really proud of that. I was really proud of the fact we set up the first drug and alcohol service in the Northwest. That was a big thing for me because I'd never been exposed to substance use and the challenges that bring. It wasn't my childhood. In terms of physical violence, I completely understood that, but I've never worked in physical violence because it petrifies me, because it is too close to what I went through. But this work around addiction was amazing that we did. And it's just these phenomenal things I got to do, and bringing in ministers, like bringing a Tory minister in the 90s into a queer charity and saying, look at this, look at what you could do, being able to have influence over where the government was shifting and moving. They were quite exciting times. I mean, I always forget all the lucky breaks I had along the way, the things I got to do. I mean, a lot of it, I've spent a lot of time influencing policy. I've spent a lot of time creating services because that's my passion. If there's a problem I want to support, I want to solve it creatively and come up with an idea and a concept that will work for people. And I'm a real research nut. So I've spent a lot of my time creating big, hefty research reports with academics. So everything from really getting to the bottom of what percentage of homeless youth are queer. I did a big study on that, to the thing I did more recently where I worked with an academic on our Queerwell report, which was about the global review. I've always been dug into research and finding the answer and then taking that and building something from it, building a service. And I remember thinking, because I was in Manchester, and I always think that, if you're outside London and you're queer, it's a big battle to be noticed and known. And, when we talk about all the wonderful people in London who have shaped the way, we forget people like Paul Martin in Manchester, who literally transformed the Northwest in terms of sexual health and HIV/AIDS awareness. We forget people like that. We forget Kath Hall, who set up the Albert Kennedy Trust, a straight woman who stood up and said no more, brought a load of queers together and built a service for homeless queer youth, at a time when it was horrendous out there, when, she was, being attacked by bishops. It sounds ridiculous, but the Bishop of Manchester called her the Witch of Withenshaw. We had that sort of thing. It's really painful. And I think when I look back on it, the one regret I have is that I shut my eyes to a lot of what I saw around me in terms of people dying, because I was a teenager. I came out in 1983 when I was 15. And I always forget going to youth group as I did, which was me going to see my girlfriend as far as my parents were concerned. I was off to see my girlfriend in Manchester, and I'd go to the youth group there. And every time somebody had been missing, or I'd get to be friends with somebody and they'd disappear after a few months. And it was ridiculous because I was wrapped up in that world and everything, petrified of sex, because if somebody touched my willy, and this is the kind of language I was using back then, if somebody touched my willy, I'm going to get AIDS. If I drink out of that coffee cup that other person who looks a bit thin at youth group, I'll get AIDS. It was ridiculous scaremongering that came from my home life. So I used to go and people would disappear and people would never come back. And I used to believe, because we had a line for that, Manchester, they've gone to that London. They're making a success of it. They've gone to that London. And we knew they hadn't. We knew they hadn't gone to London and got a job and been successful. We knew they got so sick they couldn't come anymore and their parents weren't letting them come anymore. We knew that a lot of them were working the sex industry and just got lost to us because they became positive and so ill, we couldn't reach them. And then I realized something to myself, was that there were so many people who I lost who will have had funerals. They will have all had funerals, and we weren't allowed to go to those funerals. If I'd been older, I would have demanded, but we weren't allowed. And this was the irony for me at the time, was, so now you take responsibility for your child. So now you feel you have the right to take your child back into the fold when they're dying. You had nothing to do with them. You had no interest in their life. And that's the thing that really hurts. How many funerals did I miss? I went to some, but how many funerals did I miss? How many people did I not say goodbye to, knowing full well that they weren't coming back? And it's hard, that, because whenever I'm thinking of what I've achieved, I go back to what I could have done, how I could have been if I'd been a bit stronger and not as naive. So that's part of it. And it comes back to haunt me every now and again, because I'll talk to an old friend and they'll say, well, they died, didn't you, back then? I says, no, I didn't. I didn't know they died. It's weird hearing stories about ghosts from the 90s that I'd lost touch with, and assumed and wanted to build, have an idea that they were having a lovely life somewhere. So that bit's always stuck with me, but I think it's made me determined as well. And when I got to London, suddenly I felt like I had a bigger stage to do things on. I had an opportunity to really make a difference. And it really, it angered me a little bit because it felt like, I mean, who was looking after Birmingham? Who was thinking about the Cotswolds? Who was thinking about little villages in Wales? Who was doing the work there without the profile, without the support? And when I got to London, it was when I came to work for AKT, Albert Kennedy Trust. And it was the weirdest thing because that's a national charity for queer young people facing homelessness. And I could have stayed in Manchester and done the job remotely, but I wanted to come to London and see what the difference I could do, could make. And that was when so much opened up to me and so many opportunities to make a difference. And it was such a weird time because I suddenly realized I had a flair for making money for charities, that I could raise a lot of money in a short period of time. So I built a really unique housing project where we had to raise 250 grand overnight, and we did it and we got it and we built that housing project, and it was called Purple Door, a place where young people could be safe. And that was amazing. And then I got asked to go off to Tirana, Albania, and help them build a Purple Door there. So I went off with a colleague, and me and her helped there, and we were working with ambassadors who'd all come together to fund this project. And we got heavily involved in making it happen in a place like Tirana, where people were literally walking hundreds of miles across farmland to come to a youth group in Tirana. It's crazy. I couldn't realize why people were coming to meetings covered in mud until I realized they were all coming from little villages and all sorts of areas. And then, the stuff I've done around policy, I'm very gutted that we wrote a brilliant homelessness policy for the last Tory minister that never saw the light of day. But at least I know we did some work with Angela Rayner before the Labour government in, which took that forward, and I know that's influenced how things have been. But I just realised that there's all these things that nobody knows about me. Nobody knows what I've done, where I've been. I think it's because I am quite a quiet soul some of the time, and then I'm a very loud being the rest of the time. And I think I've been quiet around the people who would have noticed, who would have, made a difference at that point. And it does, I'm the person who ends up on the bottom of a power list or doesn't even get mentioned on a power list. And then I have to say, I'm not bothered, but there's a little part of me that gets irked by things like that. And I don't know what that is. It's like got my MBE, but I saw the people get theirs way before I ever did. And I feel it feels really petty when I say that out loud. I don't think I've ever said that out loud, that I feel a bit like, why not me? Why was I not seen and heard in the same way that many people have? They're all my contemporaries. The people we hear speaking are my contemporaries. I'm a 57-year-old man. And sorry, I sound a little bit whiny, I think, at the moment, but I just feel a bit like, what stopped me having that oomph, accepting what I've done, being proud of what I've done and change it and having an even bigger impact. And I think it is down to the fact that I really struggle with the idea that I'm good enough. And that's at the heart of it. And yeah, I mean, there's been so many opportunities. I mean, what I'm doing now at Queerwell, Big Things is up to date, I'm really proud of again because there's a gap around mental health provision. I've chosen a very different way to address that gap, but it seems to be working. And, hearing, most importantly for me, going along to our Sunday Sanctuary project and hearing people's lives and stories being transformed by themselves with just a little bit of a pushy queer man in the background or a pushy queer woman or anybody who's helping them at the time. And I just see it and I love it. And I feel I'm part of a movement that's going to really transform people's own sense of worth and sense of well-being. And I love that. And I love it. Yeah. And it's just, I always think when it comes out of my mouth and when I celebrate myself like that, I just remember how I get swiped by the face for my giving cheek as a child. I get hit by my brother who was 20 years older than me because why are you showing off? Why are you showing off? And I think that's always with me a little bit today. And I always feel like, no, Tim, just hide a little bit out of view. Don't put your head above water. And the only thing that stops me hiding is the fact that I've chosen a career where people rely on you not hiding, rely on you stepping up and being counted when they can't. So it's monstrously busy life. And when I think about my life, I think about I would say 70% of my energy, my time has been poured into work, and probably 30% has been poured into my own wellness, my own happiness, my own private life. And it's sad. I met my husband when I was 51. I obviously had lots of relationships before then and lots of adventures and stuff. And I did make use of all the facilities, absolutely, throughout my life. And I've got no shame about that. And that's one thing I'm really proud of. Nobody will ever shame me for sucking cock. I'm afraid nobody will ever shame me for ribbing an arsehole. If I want to do that, I will do it. You know, that's the thing for me. It's like, don't you dare come after me for that. Come after me for harming another human being's life. That's when you come after me, and I've never done that. I hope I've never done that. So the thing for me, it's that not working on myself is something I dabble with every now and again. So, I do I read a lot. I try to find ways forward for me. But then what I'll do is I'll read something and think, oh, wouldn't that be a good like workshop for somebody else? Or why know somebody who'd really like to read that book and it'd be useful. And I find myself doing it all the time. It's like embarrassment. It's like embarrassment about me asking for something, me taking something back. I really struggle with. But that's where I'm at with my life. And I realize that I'm estranged from all my family apart from one person, my blood family, just from one person. And it's my nephew who's in his late 30s, who was my brother's son, who's actually, won't mind me saying, because I'm not going to identify him, he's gay himself, and he's estranged from his mum. He's my only blood, and he's everything to me. I think that's made it easier for me because I've only been responsible for having to love my logical family, the people I've chosen to bring into my life. And I think a lot of them would say I've not done that enough. I think that was when the only time when I showed that level of vulnerability was back in, well, it's 10 years today. It's 10 years this year, not today, that I had, and here we go, kids. I really want people to know that this, and I'm going to say it out loud and proud. I had a toxic megacolon from Shigella. Now, I know people are talking about Shigella at the moment, and it's really difficult because people are shamed about Shigella. But my doctor was homophobic, didn't understand, didn't know what was happening, so left me to be in chronic pain long enough for Shigella to turn into a toxic megacolon, which meant that my colon perforated. Luckily, I was in hospital by that point because nobody had tested me for Shigella or anything. And I went from a 12 stone to a 9 stone person after the operation. Nobody ever tells you that how you lose weight after an operation is, there you go. But I was there in hospital and I lived, it was a really hard life for a year. I had a stoma that got reversed. I went through lots of changes in how I had relationships with people, how it, my health has never been the same since all of that. And I've got a few chronic conditions as a result. But the one thing it showed me was who cared, because when I fell ill, they took my next of kin as my sister. Her response was, tell me if he dies. That's all I want to know. Tell me if he dies. They never came to see me, my family. So that would have been the opportunity to put out the olive branch. Nobody did. Sat through that when I was in coma, when I came out of a coma, when I was crapping myself everywhere because I couldn't put my stoma bag on. All that rubbish that I was going through. I had this group of friends around me who were amazing. And I'll never forget when my colon perforated, I phoned up. I was in hospital, and they were saying, "Right, we're going to operate on you at 2 o'clock in the morning." So I woke my friend up, Andrew, and he was there. He was absolutely there. He came in, and I had no idea the horror stories they were telling him. He told me afterwards that they didn't think I'd make it. That could he try and get hold of my relatives, etc. And he did all that. And I can never thank him enough. Can never thank all the friends who were around me at that time and saw me through it. But what it did was it made me slow down in my career for a little while. But then, of course, being me, I couldn't stop. But it did stop me making a big change in my life. Because I was at that point wanting to leave AKT and go and explore the world a bit and work in different countries around human rights. And I couldn't do that. I'm conscious I've wittered on for quite a long time there. So I'm going to draw a breath and drink tea.
And I'd love to respond to some of it, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Firstly, just to say thank you, because for someone who feels shy about talking about yourself, I feel very grateful that you've talked about yourself. And there were so many times I wanted to interrupt you and ask you and I just thought, no, I just want to listen. I just want to listen to hear this remarkable story of a remarkable person living a remarkable life and all of the things you've done, all of the things you've achieved, despite people who have got in your way. It strikes me that your career, and maybe you, but certainly your career, is characterized by going to the places other people are too scared to go and doing something for the first time. And that takes so much courage. It takes a really acute radar to be able to notice what's not there, because so much of our time we're so focused on what is there. And you seem to have a skill to spot where there's a gap and then to step into that gap, even if it's frightening. And when I think about all of the people's lives that you have been involved in, all the people's lives who've been touched by your care and your consideration, to me, it's both shocking and unforgivable that your family don't have that relationship with you. And also I feel like, well, that's their loss. And from the people I talk to, when you come up in conversation, you are so loved. And it's no surprise that you get so much done, because I think there are people in the world who would do anything for you if and when you ask, because that's what you've done for other people without being asked. And so I just want to acknowledge all of it. I want to celebrate it. I want to shout from the rooftops, thank fuck you are here. And for everything that you, not just that you've done, but everything you're still doing. You know, I'm wearing the Queerwell t-shirt. It's like, that's the kind of support you engender in people, because that's what you beam out. It is no surprise to me that the logo is a massive sun, because that's what you are.
See, I've gone back to squirming now. I'm back to that person who's really overwhelmed and struggling with that to hear it. I mean, thank you, because you mean the world to me. You've been in my life a year or whatever it is, but you mean the world to me, because I just see how amazing you are and what you've done and how supportive you've been of Queerwell and me. And so that means a lot. It means a hell of a lot for me, what you've just said. But it's also indicative of what I'm loving at the moment. I don't know what has shifted, but whilst I've been establishing Queerwell with some amazing people, I've opened myself up to a lot more professional and personal relationships than I have in a long time. I'm letting people in a bit more, and that's what I've noticed. You know, there's this great swell of people at the moment. I mean, it does feel like the 1980s and 90s again when I look around me. There's this great swell of incredible people like you and Darren and Rago, and you know, there's all these amazing people who. Well, where were they when I was at AKT? They were there. You were doing stuff. But now it feels like an incredible movement of people. And when I'm really, that's what keeps me, that's what I love. That's what I love. I love the fact that, you know, I love that I get to be around people like you and all those other people in my life who are just phenomenal. And that's where I get my strength from. That's what keeps me going. That's what stops me trying to finally give up the ghost. Yeah.
It's interesting when you say, like, where were all these people? Because, and you know, I will only speak for myself. I was living a really ordinary and boring life, a nice life and a good life. But when I think about what you were doing with AKT and what you were doing in Manchester, I think I was just growing into blandness. I think I was like, when I was growing up, and it's, you know, at the same time as you, we went through, you know, similar cultural shifts. And I could see that there was this world opening up and all these opportunities that were never there, and the ability to be seen. And so I did a lot of marching and a lot of protesting and a lot of writing to MPs and all of that stuff. And then I think as I got into my 20s and then, serious, and got into my 30s and was in a relationship and, building a career. And at the same time, things were shifting, legal protections were coming in and equality was available for the first time in that decade. So I think in that time, I was just becoming really ordinary. And it wasn't until my 40s that I thought, what was all that for? What was all of that protest for? Because for some people, it will have been just to be like everyone else. And I'm totally fine if that's someone's choice. But I woke up and went, that's not for me. I don't want to be just like everybody else. I don't want me and Dan to be just those nice gay people next door. And it took me until my 40s to realize that actually I was wasting a life. I was wasting a life that I'd fought for. So while you were doing all that amazing stuff, I was probably going shopping at Waitrose for pumpkins for Halloween so that I could look like a good neighbor. And I hope I never do that again. There's, for me, one of the reasons to get involved with Queerwell was because I just can't bear the thought of going back into the illusion of heterosexuality. Not heterosexuality, maybe the illusion of heteronormativity, to just be like that nice gay couple down the road. It's like, no, I want people to go, ooh, what are they doing? Those slightly mysterious and odd gay people down the road. And so doing stuff for Queerwell for me was about saying, no, I want to put myself in a place where it's about queer people. It's for queer people. It's by queer people, because I think I gave enough of my life to straight people. So yeah, I was sitting watching TV while you were doing all that brilliant stuff. And to me, that's what just makes me admire you more, that I don't see that you've ever taken the easy path. You could probably have had a very different life if you'd just said, do you know what? I'll just settle. I'll be safe. I'll just go and do what everyone else does. And you haven't. And that's why I think of you as remarkable, because you've done the opposite.
I'm always mindful, it's like careers. There's high points and low points, but I'm always mindful that a lot of people reach a point when it's their time to do something that will impact. So I would say to you, your time is now. I'd say that your time is now. That was gestation. That was not wasted, because I bet you were a good person back then. And, you went on a journey there. You developed skills which are now benefiting the community and building the community. So I'd say, and like I look at Kath in Manchester, who set up AKT, she set them up when she was 51, I think, 51, 52. She was getting close to retiring as a teacher at that point. Ian McKellen, we always think Ian McKellen was born gay, but he didn't really come out till he was nearly 50. He was in the background until that time. So I'd argue there's a time, and you can't force it, and your time is now, and you've prepared yourself for that. So, if you hadn't carried on doing what you did, you wouldn't have given people like me the freedom to do what I did. I know that sounds a bit odd, but what I'm trying to say there is you protected us. What you see as normalcy and that whole thing, you protected us from people like that, because we always knew you had our back, but you also kept people off our backs, if you like. And that's it. We can't all be at the front, going for it, can we? We really, really can't. There's times when people need to rest and get on with it. And I think that's the thing. Now's your time, and there's so much to come. And for me, this is when I need you in my life, and people like you, and the people coming to Queerwell need you in their life. That's one of the things that I love, is all I have to say now at Queerwell or Dr. Paul, and loads of people who come there are, yeah, I know you mean, da, 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 because of what you've done for Queerwell and how they see you out there for Queerwell, and how you are publicly, in every way possible, helping them and helping us. And it's great. So you're just Dr. Paul. That's it, and you're out there and you're making a massive difference, and it's just your time. It's just,
In terms of it being your time, like you said you're 57.
yeah, 58 on Friday. Oh God.
birthday when it comes. What,
Yeah.
so what's it like then at this borderline of 57, 58? What's your relationship with that age like?
Very, very mixed. Very mixed. I there's a level of vanity in me, and I'm struggling with that. I am struggling with it a bit because I had my 30s were quite outrageous and lots of fun, and I was, I really did live a certain life then, and I hanker back to that, and I miss that. I miss how free I was as a spirit. So I'm struggling a bit with age. I'm struggling more with age since I got ill in 2016 because I feel like I feel like my body's packing up, and it is. I know that because I've got quite a few things wrong with me, and it's just about which is going to, and that's it. So I'm associating 58 with just physical decline. That's the negative. That's the negative. That's what I'm holding on to. I'm really feeling that aging for me is all about the physical decline and how long I've got, and all those things and what goes next. But going back from that, I'm quite enjoying the freedom that this brings as well, because I have got a stronger than I ever have connection with young queer folk now. Better than it was 10 years ago, even at AKT. I feel like, there's a level of respect, mutual respect. There's a level of, support and, an interest in what we've done. And I think that's what I'm enjoying is people's recognition, people's support, people's, reverence, even if it does make me feel a little uncomfortable sometimes, it reminds you of your age. But yeah, I think there is that part of me that feels a bit like, you know what? You can just go for it now. Who gives a damn? And that is the wonder. People talk about this all the time, don't they? The freedom of getting older. And it is true because we're in our zenith. Because soon, before we know where we are, we'll be in our 80s, and then people will start to take our freedoms from us. Our independence will be taken from us at some point in the future. However, we're in that point where we can absolutely make the most of that freedom. So that's exciting. And that's exactly what it is. So don't be surprised if we're all chained to railings in a few weeks.
Yeah, I'll be disappointed if we're not. Now that you've put that out on the table, it's like, well, okay, show me the padlocks. What do you think this next decade has in terms of possibilities for you?
Putting aside health, and I'm really putting that aside because I think the thing that keeps me going is having things in my life. And it was just what I was thinking. I asked Russell T Davies, who affectionately is known as Mystic Meg in our house, because he has an annoying habit of telling us this doom future, and then suddenly it unravels and it happens. Nostradamus or whatever. But he's like, I asked him a question recently, and it was, okay, then you keep telling us what's going to happen, and it happens. So how do we turn things around? And he said, by a continual revolution. We can't stop. We can't sit back. And we did that. And I noticed that we'd sit back and say, now it's equality done, adoption rights done, and we'd sit back and we get back to our nice little semis and carry on. And that's what we should be doing, is exactly what Russell T Davies said. We've got to continually do stuff. And so my next 10 years is about annoying the hell out of people who have the audacity to question me and my people. My people, you know what I mean? My people, as in people who are queer. And that infuriates me. It's just that's what we've got to do. I think we have got to be the antidote to people like Trump, for example. We cannot let our foot up one little bit. It has to be a real push forward. And I want to make myself as bloody inconvenient to a world that's made my whole life inconvenient. So that's what I want to do. I mean, Queerwell, I'll be here for as long as I need to be, but I'm really happy that I'll be able to walk away in a couple of years and somebody else will take it on and hopefully it'll grow. And I'm really keen to get more into lobbying, campaigning again on a bigger stage. And I want to create a kind of sense of direction. I want to be part of creating a sense of direction for our community because I think we've lost that. I think we're a bit, what do they call it? That conflict. I've forgotten the name for it, but it's what's happening in the queer community. And you've talked to me about it as well as me talking to you. And it's this idea that we're shutting each other out. We don't want to discuss. We are finding ways of disliking each other, of not forgiving each other. And it's like we're wasting all our energy on, on attacking people who are slightly different than us rather than people who don't want us around. And so part of me wants to start, what can we do to create that dialogue where, and we've seen it at Queerwell, Sunday Sanctuary, where a 20-year-old a 20-year-old trans woman can talk to a 60-year-old second wave feminist and have a level of, I've got your back, you've got mine. We may be different. That's where we've got to get to. We've got to get to that point where, as gay men, we stop that complacency about not us, we're fine. Because I've seen what happens when we get older. I've seen people in their 80s and 90s who are queer men, and just what happens to them. So yeah, that's what we've got to do. We've got to keep our foot on the pedal, be as annoying as possible, and wherever possible, get that unification, unify again like we did, because it can't just be that we come together for high days, holidays, and marches.
When you said that you're doing this for my people, I loved that because it reminded me of something that I thought about earlier, which then completely slipped my mind because my memory doesn't hold anything anymore at this age. I was really struck by when you were talking about the way that you still beat yourself up about those people whose funerals you couldn't go to, even though that was not your fault. And it reminded me of something which I just saw the other day for the first time, even though I'm sure it's very well known, that Maya Angelou said when she talked about every time she went on stage, she said, I bring with me all the people who've ever loved me, even when they're no longer here. And that feeling of you are doing this for your people and you are surrounded by your people who are no longer here. All those people whose lives you've touched, they will be with you on every stage. They will be with you in every conversation. They will be with you every time you chain yourself to a fence. And as well as that, there will be me and all the other people that you've got in your life who have your back, because you can do extraordinary things that so many of us can't. And I love being part of the space where we can make that happen together. And so all those people that you couldn't go to their funerals, they're with you as you stand there chained to that fence.
Do you know that's the saddest thing, but also the most positive thing? It's not many things you can say that about, is that, but what you've just described is, it fills me with pain that I can't talk to those people, that I can never have a conversation with them, that I can never say, what I want to say. And I remember when I went to the Tate Modern, they had the quilt, the UK AIDS quilt. I was frantically looking around for names. That's all I was bothered about. Who do I know? Who's here? Who's on this floor? Whose graveside am I at? And that was quite major for me. But the thing is, yeah, that's the sad part. But the positive is, you're right. My energy comes through part of it's anger for those people. Part of it's they've made they made something in my life happen. They contributed to who I am. So yeah, that is wonderful. And that's like that moment in, I can't think, this is my brain going now. That moment in Matthew Lopez's play, I can't think of the name of it, which was on about 5 years ago, where you had all these ghosts come onto the stage who passed before, all these queer voices come onto the stage. And it was just amazing. And it was like, that for me is a really powerful thing to take forward. And it's that energy, isn't it? I get it. I get it now. I've just processed what you were saying. And it's like, they've given me energy to carry on. They've given me that warmth to carry on. And nothing takes that away. Death doesn't take that away.
There's something in the way that I think we metabolize those things. Like I remember seeing the quilts exhibition and just, cried my way around, like to the point that one of the staff came over and went, do you need a room to go and sit in? Because it just hit me. And then I went into the cafe and I finished writing my book, because there was something in that moment where I went, I can't waste any more time. There is no excuse for me not to do something, and to be able to turn whatever that was, whether it was sadness, anger, guilt, fear, all of those things, and then go, actually do something with it, do something. And I feel like that's how we honor those people who don't have the privilege of still being here, is that we keep doing something with our lives that we have.
And it's really interesting because weirdly, very weirdly, my dad was, and this is an analogy that you wouldn't think I'd make, but my dad was 50 when I was born. So he fought in the Second World War. He went off in 1939 at the age of 19 and fought. And he has a lot to say. I mean, my dad had a lot to say, and he was really supportive of me throughout my life. Obviously, I lost him when I was a teenager, but he was amazing. Now, the thing that he often said is when he was on he was on the beaches on D-Day, and um, he was supposed to be, everybody's fighting to go with their mates in the same boat. Oh, I want to go with him, and there wasn't space for him with all his mates. Good. And he was pulled back by one of the officers, and he was pulled back, and then he watched that boat get blown up with all his friends on it in front of him. And he's looked at the officer and said, "Why didn't you let me go with them? That should have been me." And he said, "Well, you've got something to prove now. All those lives were lost, and they've been lost for nothing if you don't make a difference now. If you make a difference." And I don't like to quote war stories. This is just not me, but it was him saying, you have got to do something really special with your life for all those people that you've lost on that boat. They're never going to get to be older and live their lives. And he was great. Just to lighten the mood a little bit, that's why I was nearly called Walter. So thank heavens, because my dad's best friend, Walter, was on that boat and I was supposed to be named after him. But my mother fought tooth and nail to name me after her last dog, Tim. So I was saved. But I was almost Walter because Walter was on that boat. But the thing is, that's my dad. That was my dad's thing, bloody, you live it for those people that can't, and that's what he did. He lived it for every one of those poor souls who were on that boat in front of him.
And you're still doing it. In terms of Queerwell, how can people get involved? How can they give you money? How can they offer support? How can they access support?
I mean, that's it. It's how with Queerwell, we're a small charity. We're never going to be a big charity, I don't think, because we're too driven by the community, and that's how we should be. I don't want us to become a monolith that doesn't really understand the people that they're there for. And that does happen when you become a big charity. So I just think there is a place for everybody at Queerwell to roll up their sleeves and get involved. And yes, of course, if you have money, pass it on and, just go to our website, press the 32,000 donate buttons and give to us. Queerwell.org.uk. Please just go in and give what you can. That's a big difference. That does make a difference. However, if you can volunteer some of your time, and because we're so small, we don't have a big workforce. So if your skill is filming, if your skill is, photography, if your skill is event management, whatever it is, there's a role for you at Queerwell. There is probably about 15 different roles, and you can be based wherever you are for most of those. So come and volunteer. Again, go to the website. There's a blurring button for volunteering. But also, the one thing I really ask people to do is push. I've realized that social media has power, but it's limited because people scroll, and we're all one big colourful mass. So I'm not going to say follow us on blah, blah, blah. What I'd rather you did is talk to 10 people who have some sort of influence, some sort of power, people like your GP, because I want GPs to refer to Queerwell. I want to be a social prescribing base. We want to be a social prescribing base. Talk to a wealthy friend, talk to somebody who you really feel could do with us. That's the biggest thing you can do. If you feel somebody's wobbly, just send them to one of our workshops and get them in. So that's what the most powerful thing you can do is take 10 people in your life who will do what you ask them to do, get them doing something for us.
I love that. So you're one of the handful of people in the world who has read my book, and not just that, you've now written the foreword for the book. love, like in the listings, we're co-authors. It's brilliant. On Amazon, you're
It's
there as author,
ridiculous.
which is amazing.
That's odd.
It's fantastic. I'm so grateful that you've given your words to it. And because the book is still here, still queer now, something I ask everyone who comes on the podcast is just to finish the sentence, I'm still here, I'm still queer, Han.
I'm here for you. I think I'd say that I'm here for you. I'm still queer. I'm still here and I'm here for you. I will never turn the light. I'll never turn the whole light off. You'll always know that my whole light will be on for you in some way.
Can people get in touch with you if they want to? And if you want them to, where could they find you?
I'd love it. I love it. I love talking to new people. I love getting people involved. tim@queerworld.org.uk, or, I don't care if people follow me online. I'd rather you send me an email and talk to me. So tim@queerworld.org.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Thank you for everything you do. I can't wait to see what happens next. I feel so excited about all the things you've got planned and all of the things that are bubbling away. Like, I just feel like, yeah, you're so right. This is our time.
It is. The most exciting thing for me is people like you have said, yeah, I'm in. And then, you just talked about that co-author thing, which is like very ridiculous when I think, but anyway, it's sweet that they've done that. But you're the co-author of Queerwell, Darren is, Nick is, me is. We're all founders. We're all founders of Queerwell. And that's what excites me, because there's so much energy and creativity coming in from people like yourself. And that's the exciting thing. So whatever happens, you're not a bystander in any of that.
Go chain ourselves to a fence.
Yeah, I will do.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for coming into my life and just showing me all that kindness and just all that wonderful ways of shaping the way I think. It's been wonderful. It is wonderful.
Likewise. Here's to more of it.
Yeah, absolutely.